We kick things off with an absolute nightmare. Our main guy is just standing there completely surrounded by a mountain of dead bodies. He locks eyes with his absolute best friend, the guy who threw down right beside him in countless boss fights. Completely heartbroken, he begs to know why he backstabbed him. Kim just gives him this ice-cold stare, taking him back to the very beginning of the apocalypse. Way back then, the whole planet got overrun by these savage beasts pouring out of random portals. Those freaks literally wrecked everything in sight. Eventually, people started calling those rifts secret domains, and anyone crazy enough to get close caught some insane supernatural abilities, basically unlocking their classes. That is exactly why these elite squads of awakened users teamed up to raid the portals, wipe out the mobs, and grind to face even crazier boss threats. Kim keeps yapping. He glares right at our hero and straight up admits that this was exactly why he snitched. His power levels just got way too broken. He basically became a massive walking red flag for the Empire. The super high-tier players could literally flip the whole system upside down. The second he pushed past S rank, he became public enemy number 1. That kind of insane buff belongs strictly to the royals just to keep things completely balanced. Our guy demands to know if that actually justifies wiping out his entire family and his guild. Kim just flashes this totally psycho smirk and doubles down, claiming he did the whole thing just to protect the Empire. Before our hero can even flinch, Kim triggers a nasty trap hidden right inside his gear, and a split second later it completely blows up. The blast absolutely shreds him, but it also pumps his veins full of some crazy deadly poison rigged inside the suit. Kim brags that he totally planned this out, knowing our guy would be completely burned out after clearing that S-rank dungeon. It was literally the perfect window to guarantee he got wiped off the map. This blonde snake even had a massive army on standby, refusing to leave absolutely anything to chance. Out of options, our main guy takes his very last breath. As everything fades to black, his brain flashes back to all those fake memories with his so-called bro. Right then, the crazy requirements for his hidden skill, Mirror World, actually click into place. An S-rank skill that can literally flip reality. Even though our hero flatlines, his soul just refuses to log out of this world, sinking super deep into a dark lake until he completely vanishes. Fast forward decades later, we pan right back to that exact same spot. Now we catch this group of toxic punks completely tormenting some poor kid. One of the bullies punches him right in the gut, yelling at him to stop playing dead. Then they actually shove his head underwater, laughing about his acting skills, and hold him down just to mess him up even more. The squad jokes about pulling him up just to beat him down again. The kid is literally choking, feeling the Grim Reaper tapping his shoulder completely out of air. Right before fading out, he wonders why his life had to be such pure garbage. Right when he taps out, our main guy, Dormant Soul, finally snaps awake, catching the kid final desperate prayer. Meanwhile, back up on dry land, this nerdy dude with glasses suddenly rolls up. He rushes over and begs them to back off, warning them they are literally going to catch a body. The lead bully gives him this dirty look, laughing that if the kid actually dies, it is on him for being a trash tier healer. Then he totally calls out the nerd fake energy, dropping the absolute bombshell that he was the one who ratted out the victim. Glasses guy fully panics, screaming that they totally forced his hand. The bully gets super triggered and swings at him, but then things get incredibly weird right behind them. This blinding, creepy aura just explodes straight out of the water. The punks see the glow, completely freak out, and dip fast while screaming about a brand new dungeon spawn. Sprinting away, they admit there is zero chance they can survive that drop. The nerdy kid almost bails too, but glancing back and realizing his classmate is still hogtied underwater, he actually rushes the rope, desperately trying to pull off a save. Right at that moment, the entire lake instantly evaporates and mobs start spawning out of absolutely nowhere. One of the freaks locks onto him, charging right as he struggles with those tight knots. At the literal last second, someone yanks him by the shirt, tossing him out of the kill zone right before impact. Then this mystery guy points his hand right at the beast, firing off a nasty skill called Glacial Strike. A system prompt pops up, mocking him that he just tried casting basic healing on a low-tier demon, completely failing since the monster HP. The bar was fully restored. The kid with the glasses totally loses his mind. He has absolutely no clue why our guy just tossed a heal at the monster instead of blasting it. Right as the beast lunges forward again, the kid throws up a barrier, blocking the massive strike at the absolute last second. Our main character pulls up his system interface to figure out this mess, and spots his brand new identity, Yun. He is rocking a healer class and sitting at a pathetic level 5. It suddenly clicks for him how this reality operates. The second someone triggers a hidden dungeon, they get hardwired into the system and roll completely random stats. Those base stats are locked in stone, but players can grind to upgrade them back in his past life. He was an absolute unit of a warrior sitting at the peak of the food chain. A memory flashes of the ultimate skill. He popped right before biting the dust. Mirror World turns out he was locked inside that void, right until the agonizing final scream of this dying kid. That is when it hits him, that he literally respawned straight into the body of this teenager. Deep down, he is genuinely hyped about this, since it hands him a golden ticket to pull off his massive revenge arc. A panicked yell from the kid with glasses violently snaps him back to reality, warning him that a whole swarm. He is begging for backup right now, since his squishy build can barely hold off 3 of these things at once. Yoon quickly scans his new physical vessel, realizing it is incredibly fragile. Even the lowest tier mobs out in the field pack way more muscle than he does right now. Honestly, with his current movement speed, he could not even sprint away from danger if he tried. Without wasting a second, he drops down his skill menu, realizing every single trick he has is completely garbage. His basic heal barely restores 1 to 4 health points per cast. Another move is Vine Control, which lets him spawn heavy plant roots to lock down enemy movements, but the actual drop rate for a successful stun is painfully low. He instantly gets why everyone treats healer mains like absolute trash. They are nothing but walking medkits, and horribly useless at literally anything else. Armed with that knowledge, he taps into his veteran battle reflexes to survive this massacre just a tiny bit longer. Weaving through multiple deadly strikes, he knows his stamina bar is draining fast, meaning he desperately needs an escape route. His one and only lifeline right now is the Mirror World ability. Smoothly dodging another heavy lunge, he swipes at a beast to trigger the skill. But either his player level is way too low, or this power specifically demands a glossy mirror surface to work. He slams his hand against the creature again, and it totally flops. The interface flashes a clear warning that his level is garbage. Absolutely certain he needs something shiny. He tests it out on different targets, and even tries slapping the weapon of the monster, yet the spell misfires once again with the exact same error code. Jin screams his lungs out, telling him to stop throwing around trash tier moves. He is literally seconds away from getting wiped out. Suddenly, a totally suffocating pressure crashes down from the clouds, revealing an absolute unit of the Twisted Dark Lord. This nightmare is sitting at level 10 and boasts a massive health bar. The kid with the glasses straight up accepts that it is game over. Taking down an elite boss like that requires a heavy hitter, who is level 10 at the bare minimum, rains down from above, and dozens of fresh nightmare creatures spawn in. The kid with the glasses collapses to the dirt in pure shock, which makes total sense, considering he is staring down. Meanwhile, our main guy keeps spamming the Mirror World skill on some jagged rocks, and it keeps flopping. He realizes in his head that the actual level barrier to unlock this crazy power is ridiculously high, completely out of backup plans. He attempts to cast it right on the dropping a brutal alert that his skill cannot bounce back, moves cast by other players. That triggers a massive lightbulb moment for Yoon. If he cannot manipulate enemy magic, maybe he can actually reflect his own spells. Without missing a beat, he slaps the Mirror World magic onto one of his garbage tier, moves specifically targeting his Vine Control power. A golden notification pops up confirming the spell inversion worked flawlessly. Mere seconds pass before thousands of razor-sharp thorns explode out of nowhere, shredding countless monsters to pieces. At that exact moment, when a beast lunges for Jin, a completely different monster, glowing with a blood-red aura, brutally tackles the first one to save the kid. Yoon stands there totally frozen, watching the insane chain reaction unfold. The magic completely flipped on its head, instead of just locking targets down. Yoon stands there totally frozen, watching the insane chain reaction unfold. The magic completely flipped on its head instead of just locking targets down. It triggers pure chaos and mass confusion. His old Vine Control skill would barely root enemies in place, maybe slowing them down for a split second. But the moment he flips it using Mirror World, it mutates into something entirely different: chaotic thorns. This twisted ability shreds targets with razor-sharp spikes, scrambling their brains and forcing them to turn on anyone standing nearby. Right on cue, the monsters completely lose it and start tearing each other apart. A wicked smirk naturally creeps across the face of Yun, because he literally just took a trash tier skill and weaponized it into an absolute nuke. His mind races, imagining the insane potential of flipping the rest of his kit, realizing that Mirror World 100% lives up to the hype as a hidden S-rank ability, because it does not just reverse the effects, it massively buffs them across the board. If he had dropped the base version of that spell, the hit rate would have been totally garbage, lasting barely a single second, which is a complete joke compared to this god-tier damage output. Yoon spots an abandoned blade resting on the dirt, snatching it up while scanning through his skill window. His eyes lock onto a spell called Basic Strike Blade. The stats show it burns 20 mana points, lasts for 30 seconds and gives a flat 5% damage boost, but the buff instantly cancels the second you use any more mana. But the moment Yoon slaps Mirror World onto basic Strike Blade, the spell totally morphs into a brand new skill called Trickster Blade. This upgraded version costs 40 mana, stays active for 60 seconds, and the crazy part is that it actually boosts his attack power by 10% every single time he burns mana. Yoon pops the skill immediately. His newly acquired sword suddenly pulses with a violently dark aura, and he quickly realizes the exploit. As long as this buff stays up, spamming any other skill will just keep stacking his damage. The sheer scaling of this ability actually scares him because of how ridiculously broken it is, sending a rush of adrenaline through his veins. Right in the middle of his hype moment, a system alert pops up instantly, bumping him to level 6. He scans the battlefield, noticing heaps of monster corpses that just slaughtered each other, feeding him massive chunks of free experience. Out of nowhere, a surviving beast tries to blindside him, but Yoon casually parries the strike at the very last microsecond. Glancing at his health bar, he notices it sits at 480 points, while his mana pool is fully capped at 120. Completely refreshed all the energy he just burned through. Since the remaining mobs are still busy tearing each other to shreds, Yun decides to test run Trickster Blade to see its absolute damage ceiling. He kicks things off by spamming Chaotic Thorns, just to dump his mana. Every single cast triggers the Trickster Blade passive, skyrocketing his damage output, though his energy pool is naturally draining extremely fast. His physical strikes keep amplifying by an extra 10% over and over, pushing the limit right up until his mana bar hits rock bottom at 12 points. The glowing system prompt confirms his base damage is now boosted by an insane 120%, and the best part is, he still has 44 full seconds left on the buff timer. Yoon locks eyes with a charging beast, realizing this skill did not just meet his expectations, it completely shattered them. It literally lets him double his damage output with almost zero effort, which is honestly kind of scary. The monster lunges, but Yoon casually deflects the strike swiftly, sidestepping behind the creature and delivering a massive slash right across its spine, and following up with a brutal gut strike. Watching from afar, Jin is completely speechless, totally mind-blown at how a squishy level 5 healer can pull off movement with that kind of insane agility. He stands there questioning when support classes suddenly started mastering elite-tier combat mechanics. Yoon just keeps farming mob after mob, clearly feeling his raw physical stats spiking higher every single second since hitting level 6. He does the quick math in his head, realizing that on paper he can easily push way past double his base damage, especially after he finishes off a level 11 beast. That wicked grin returns to his face, knowing his growth potential is basically limitless right now. But right at that exact moment, a colossal beast suddenly bursts from the ground. As the monster tears its way out of the dirt, a glowing system window flashes its boss stats. Hidden Demon Boss, packing 10,020 health points, 300 mana, an insane 167 resistance, and an attack stat of 180. With just one careless swipe, it instantly wipes out all the smaller mobs surrounding it. Jin freezes in pure terror. Even Yoon is caught off guard, completely shocked that a basic dungeon would spawn a hidden boss with this kind of broken scaling. The massive demon lunges straight at Yun with terrifying speed. Our guy instantly tries to trigger Chaotic Thorns to stop it, but the spell completely fizzles out. The boss is flat out immune to crowd control. Just as the beast is about to rip him apart, the glass-wearing kid jumps into the fray and slams his shield down, absorbing the brutal impact. Jun is absolutely stunned, seeing a ghost from his past in this kid for the very first time. A sudden flashback screams at him to keep his guard up, or he is going to die right there. Then we see Jin's shield completely shatter, under the boss's crushing raw power, sending the boy flying across the room. He hits the ground hard, totally wrecked and bleeding. Our main guy cannot believe this kid just threw away his life like that, sprinting over to pull him back from the brink. Jun spams his basic healing skill before the kid flatlines, but the spell only gives back a single pathetic hit point, while completely draining his mana pool. Right then, his Trick Blade passive triggers, buffing his attack power by 10%. He fires off another basic heal, and this time he lands a critical hit, pumping 5 crucial health points back into the boy. Jun keeps grinding the skill until he is down to exactly 1 drop of mana. He urgently asks the battered kid if he has any health potions left, and the kid chokes out that he has 1 stashed for emergencies. Jun breathes a sigh of relief, yelling at him to chug it right now. The system suddenly flashes, warning him that Trickblade only has 8 seconds left on the clock. Since the massive boss is distracted, wiping out the smaller mobs, June tells the bleeding kid to hang tight for just 1 minute while he takes advantage of the perfect opening. The kid looks at him like he is crazy, having absolutely no clue what the plan is. But before he can even open his mouth, June explodes forward like an absolute missile, slicing through the low-level grunts, one by one with terrifying, insane speed. Seconds later, the Trick Blade buff runs dry. But the timing is flawless, his level skyrockets and his health and mana bars shoot right back up to 100%. Knowing exactly what to do, he triggers Trick Blade all over again, looping the whole crazy cycle. He unleashes Chaotic Thorns, burning through his mana pool. Trick Blade kicks in, stacking another 10% attack buff with every single hit. Doing the quick math in his head, he realizes he needs to hit at least a 400% damage boost if he even wants a shot at dropping this boss. He spends the next few minutes completely shredding the mob waves, leveling up non-stop. The injured kid just watches this entire bloodbath in absolute shock. When the boss finally charges right at our main guy, he stares death straight in the face, waiting until Trickblade flashes a wild 510% damage multiplier. He sidesteps the hit and blasts forward like pure lightning, completely dicing the monstrous boss's arm into tiny bloody ribbons. Hovering mid-air, he coldly whispers that he is not done yet before obliterating the beast with a crazy fast combo, dumping massive amounts of critical damage. In the blink of an eye, he completely wipes the level 21 boss off the map. Riding the high of this insane victory, he jumps up 3 whole ranks back-to-back, securing level 15. The battered kid thinks he is straight up hallucinating, wondering how on earth a flimsy level 5 healer managed to solo clear a brand new dungeon, all by himself. The glowing system screen pops up, displaying June's fresh stats, proving he is officially sitting at level 15. As the dark dungeon space starts breaking apart and fading away, the kid limps over to June, seriously questioning if this absolute beast is really the same guy he knew from before. Before Jun can even spit out an answer, the system dings, forcing him to scoop up all the sweet dropped loot. Jin pushes him again, demanding to know how he got so overpowered overnight. Jun spaces out, hit by a sudden heavy memory from his old life. He then drops a bomb, asking the nerdy kid if he ever knew a guy named Ben. The boy is totally shook, freaking out over how a stranger could possibly know his great-grandfather's name. June is equally mind-blown, realizing this random kid is the direct bloodline of his old friend Ben. It looks like that scumbag Kim did not completely wipe out everyone I cared about. June whispers, his face dropping into heavy sorrow. Shaking it off, he tries to squeeze more answers out of Jin. But the kid gets totally defensive, snapping back that he does not owe him any explanations and tells him to back off and stop disrespecting his family name. Our hero is completely lost, having zero clue why the kid is suddenly. But before he can push back, the kid admits he has no idea why June is hiding these insane god-tier powers. Figuring he has his own shady reasons, the kid begs to ditch this creepy place fast. He complains he desperately needs to get back to school, crying that if he ends up skipping tomorrow's museum trip, the whole class is going to have him on their radar. Our main guy listens to this weird high school rant, but seriously does not catch a single word of it. Letting it slide, he just takes Jin's advice, getting the hell out of that crumbling dungeon. He's keeping his true identity totally under wraps, for now at least, until he figures out how this new era actually works. Flash forward to the next morning, the crew is heading straight to the History Museum. Our guy is absolutely mind-blown by how intensely the world has leveled up. These days, people are literally powering vehicles using loot dragged straight out of secret domains. He actually recognizes some of these artifacts from his past dungeon runs, but seeing them casually used out in the open feels wildly surreal. Curious, he attempts to pull an item from his personal stash, and shockingly enough, the system totally lets him do it. He even tests out his ultimate cheat skill, Mirror World, on a spellbook, flipping its stats without breaking a single drop of sweat. That catches him slightly off guard, but he shrugs it off and keeps moving. One major catch he does figure out, though, is that players can only extract the exact loot they manage to shove into their inventory, right before the entire dungeon collapses into thin air. Side note, does anyone else think our boy is giving off massive Shadow Monarch vibes? Anyway, the second they step foot inside the museum, their eyes are immediately locked onto this colossal, towering statue dead ahead. The teacher quickly gathers the class, hyping up the monument by explaining that the guy carved in stone is their absolute overlord Kim, the legendary emperor who completely wiped out the most apocalyptic disaster ever triggered by the secret dungeons. He goes on to claim that right on this very spot over 50 years ago, the bloodiest battle of the Grand Rebellion went down. The history lesson claims that back in the day, a massive S-rank gate ripped wide open. Nightmarish monsters flooded out, unleashing absolute hell across the lands. That chaos reigned until King Kim supposedly stepped up personally, commanding his elite forces to crush the monster wave, pulling off a brutal victory, despite swallowing massive casualties. And right when humanity was bleeding, a bunch of traitors supposedly backstabbed the throne. Leading this rogue squad was none other than the so-called villain, Yun Che, a guy the king literally trusted with his own life, only to get completely snaked by him in the end. Hearing this heavily twisted version of history, our main character's blood boils as a terrifying aura starts leaking from his body. Furious, he mentally snaps back that he and his squad were the ones who actually cleared that raid, and they were the ones who got brutally set up. Before he can act on his rage, the teacher wraps up the fairy tale, bragging that despite having their backs against the wall, the king bounced back. Standing shoulder to shoulder with the heroic Ding Kung entirely drenched in blood, they fought until they secured the ultimate win. Cooling down a bit, our guy seriously questions if a dude named Ding Kung was even present during that massive slaughter. Before he can jog his memory, Jin, who's standing right next to him, gets cornered by those exact same bullies from yesterday. The punks openly mock them, acting totally shocked that the duo somehow survived, getting swallowed by that fresh dungeon break. One of the snobs claims they just got carried by pure luck, dropping a rumor that some high-tier pro was chilling nearby and speed ran. The entire boss zone, the juicy gossip about a brand new gate spawning, instantly grabs the entire class's attention. Just so you know, our main guy is heavily biting his tongue to stay completely off the radar. The crowd instantly swarms those arrogant jerks, firing off a million questions though. Two girls in the back clearly couldn't care less about the drama. Din, the ringleader of this toxic group, leans in and whispers darkly to the glasses-wearing kid that he's thrilled they're breathing. Why? Because the duo supposedly dragged Din's crew near that deadly dungeon, and now it's payback time for the trauma. Jin fires back instantly, snapping that the ambush was entirely their own fault. He even threatens to snitch to the guild authorities right then and there about what they pulled on Young. Flashing a psycho cold-blooded glare, Din warns the kid that he's playing a very dangerous game. He then forces Jin to look up at the monument, pointing straight at the hero Ding Kung, brutally stomping on the supposed traitor's skull. Flexing his nasty ego, Ben Xiaoding ruthlessly reminds Jin that since he's the trashy descendant of a backstabber, and Din comes from pure hero blood, the crowd will never back him up. Out of nowhere, the bully starts screaming at the top of his lungs, acting like a total victim, and vowing to ruin Jin for disrespecting his grandfather's legacy. Jin panics trying to clear his name, but the mob is already absolutely roasting him, demanding he show some respect to the legendary Ding Kung. Meanwhile, Yun's inner demon is quietly waking up as his last shred of patience evaporates into thin air. The brainwashed students gang up on Yun, viciously branding him as pure garbage and spitting out the most toxic insults just because his ancestor allegedly wiped out thousands of innocents in cold blood. Making matters 10 times worse, that scumbag Din keeps heavily gaslighting the crowd, whining about how his precious pride got damaged, and spewing utter nonsense that buries the poor kid with glasses even deeper in trouble. Finally, the teacher steps in, but instead of fixing things, he pulls the kid aside and quietly forces him to apologize to Din. Honestly, he needed a brutal reminder that the legendary hero spared his bloodline back in the day, meaning he owed these snobby descendants some major respect. Those toxic words hit the poor kid like a truck, reminding him that he was completely isolated in this hellhole. The bully ruthlessly grabs the kid by the hair, practically whispering that he is about to deliver a beatdown so savage the whole crowd will cheer. And honestly, the brainwashed audience was already chanting for Jin to get wrecked. Wasting zero time, Ding winds up for a devastating punch, but before his fist even connects, a lethal kick slams directly into his jaw, dropping him to the floor in absolute cinematic glory. Surprise, surprise, the one delivering the karma was our main character, striking the most disrespectful pose imaginable, while casually asking if the so-called hero bloodline completely skipped out on learning basic human decency. The onlookers were entirely paralyzed by the shock, erupting into chaotic whispers, convinced that Yun Che had completely lost his mind. Not only did he have the absolute audacity to mock the prestigious, but he actually had the guts to physically fold one of their golden boys. Some random extra in the back yelled out that the dude was barely level 5, meaning he was absolutely cooked. The second Ding managed to scrape himself off the pavement, prompting the arrogant to wiping his face, he scoffs, claiming he never expected his personal punching bag to actually bite back. Honestly, he was not even planning on bullying him today, but since the trash was begging for a beating, he was more than happy to obliterate him. Yun zones in tracking every single twitch from his enemies before rocketing forward with blinding speed, dropping the goons one by one like absolute flies. As Ding furiously thrashes around on the ground in pure agony, our boy letting the rich kid know he will never ever be strong enough to beat him. The entire hall goes dead, silent jaws practically hitting the floor, as the crowd desperately tries to process the glitch in the matrix they just witnessed. They wondered if Ding, the untouchable golden child of the hero family, was actually getting clapped by a measly level 5 newbie. Hearing those whispers completely shattered the bully, fragile ego, pushing him to activate his berserker rage skill, screaming that a worthless piece of trash like Yun Che could never outclass him, and in a desperate move, he summoned a massive devastating hammer straight from his inventory, blindly charging at our main character with murderous intent. But to Yun, the guy was moving in extreme slow motion, so he casually mocked the bully garbage defense right before launching a vicious uppercut that basically factory reset the rich kid's entire brain. But our boy was not done yet, following up with a savage axe kick that buried the guy face first into the concrete. Right on cue, a museum security guard stormed onto the scene, aggressively demanding to know who started the brawl. Spotting the broken VIP student twitching on the floor, he screamed at the crowd to use healing magic immediately, but the students were completely paralyzed by the hype, totally ignoring the guard's frantic orders. Oh, and by the way, a couple of cute girls in the back were definitely catching feelings for our badass hero. Furious, the guard snapped at the instructor, roasting the teacher for failing to control his feral students, asking if the guy even realized these brats could have destroyed the priceless artifacts on display. Boiling with rage, the biased teacher ordered Yun to get his foot off the golden child, and without warning, the dirty instructor pulled a weapon from his stash and swung at the student, but our boy flawlessly parried the strike. Instantly triggering the protective barrier from that ultra-rare ring, he looted back in the dungeon. The bystanders were absolutely losing their minds over this kid's hidden power level, since it made zero sense for a rookie to tank a direct hit from an elite instructor like it was nothing. Yun, dropping all the playful vibes, stared daggers at the corrupt teacher, asking if he thought it was cute to suddenly play the hero for the rich kid when he purposely turned a blind eye while Jin was being harassed earlier. Before the old man could bark back, his eyes locked onto the glowing jewelry on the kid finger, instantly recognizing it as high-tier elite gear, causing panic to set in as the teacher assumed this kid secretly had some terrifying, heavily armed connection. Playing the game perfectly, our cunning protagonist put on a fake smile, smoothly apologizing, and claiming his previous accusation was totally out of line, since obviously a respected educator like him would never show blatant favoritism to the wealthy kids. The instructor totally caught the threatening sarcasm, dripping from those words, nervously sweating, as he promised to thoroughly investigate the mess before passing any judgment. Inwardly, Yun took a deep breath, admitting to himself that provoking a level 35 veteran while only relying on a shield dropped by a level 21 boss was a wildly reckless gamble. Playing the martyr, he casually told the teacher he would punish himself by leaving the field trip early smoothly, grabbing Jin to make their grand exit. The entire student body was left buzzing in pure awe, endlessly whispering about the insane main character energy Yunche just displayed against an authority figure, and they wildly debated what his actual terrifying combat level could be, until the furious instructor finally snapped, screaming at the useless medics to cast some healing spells on the crumpled golden boy. Stepping out of the museum, our guy is absolutely fuming. It hits him that not a single person from his old crew made it out alive. Catching Jin staring at him like a total fanboy, Yoon decides to play it cool and fish for some intel. He casually brings up the legendary stunts pulled off by the so-called hero Ding Kun, dropping the classic excuse of being completely clueless about history. Jin instantly lights up, admitting he is not exactly a history buff either. But the word on the street is that the great hero was the absolute first guy to uncover the dark schemes of the evil Yun Che. So he set up a massive ambush, right outside an S-rank secret domain, to shut his operation down for good. Hearing this straight up floors our guy. The actual truth is way darker, because back in the day his squad was just catching their breath, right after wiping out a whole domain, when a massive swarm of assassins dropped from the shadows and slaughtered everyone. Yoon was completely powerless to stop the bloodbath. Oblivious to the tension, Jin keeps hyping up this fake hero. He brags that after the king gave Ding Kun a massive promotion, the guy basically went on a world tour, crushing domains left and right, and rescuing innocent people. One of his absolute biggest flexes was stopping the legendary disaster at Winter City. Of course, that was just another massive lie, because the one who actually pulled that miracle off was Yoon himself. Keeping his head down, Yun casually asks his buddy if he knows anything about the specific weapon this hero wields. Jin nods and claims it is the exact same blade used to strike down the traitor Yun Che, and that it is an absolutely god-tier item. Yun immediately drops his friendly vibe. Deep down, he realizes this absolute did not just steal his life's work and glory, he literally snatched his most precious sword. That dude basically just signed his own death warrant. Fast forward to later that day outside the massive Ding family estate. Heavily armed guards are doing their usual patrols. Out of nowhere, one of the sentries catches a weird vibe and snaps his head around. But seeing just a couple of random teenagers hanging around, he completely brushes it off. It is not like two skinny kids could actually pull off a heist. Yoon smirks, whispering that it is exactly as he predicted. Most of these bodyguards are just basic scouts packing low-level detection skills. Jin is practically shaking in his boots. He begs Yoon to ditch the area before they get totally busted. Yoon completely tunes him out as his mind is spinning. He calculates the massive power gap between his current weak state and the fake hero Ding Kun. Plus, based on the latest intel from Jin, that coward is constantly hiding out inside a top-tier domain. Heavily locked down by the military, and breaking inside requires a special access pass. An item that Yoon is absolutely certain he can loot straight out of the Ding family mansion. Right before making a move, Yoon asks his buddy a crucial question. Why does a minor branch family out of more than 10 bloodlines need this insane amount of heavy security? The glasses guy drops a bombshell, explaining that these rich snobs literally have an entire private domain parked right inside their house. This completely shatters the expectations of Yoon, and he has no clue how that is even physically possible. Glasses breaks it down, saying that low-level domains are basically treated like trading cards nowadays. You can buy and sell them freely, but you need some serious cash and influence to actually pull it off. Regular folks only ever get to see a dungeon during mandatory training sessions at school, and they have to fight tooth and nail against other students just to steal some monster kills and scrape together a single level up. Yoon is completely stunned by how wild society has become. Back in his prime, absolutely anyone could just walk right into a domain without dealing with all this VIP garbage. He quickly asks Jin if this basically means that the richer and more connected you are, the faster you can farm levels. His buddy nods, revealing that your average Joe usually graduates, barely scraping past levels 15 or 20. After that, since they are totally locked out of domains, they are permanently hard stuck. The only real way out is scoring a brutal blue-collar job, doing mining runs or guard duty inside these restricted zones. And if you survive that grind, you might barely hit level 30 by the time you hit middle age. The only other shortcuts are getting drafted into the military, or sweating your life away at school just to get scouted by a massive guild, or scoring a spot in some fancy government agency that holds the keys to the high-tier farming spots. Yoon soaks all this depressing reality in for a second. His nervous sidekick practically begs him again to run away before things get totally out of hand. But our guy flat out ignores the warning again. He confidently explains that the detection skills you unlock around level 30 are absolutely pathetic when it comes to range. So no matter how many meatheads they hire, there is absolutely zero chance they can lock down this massive estate 24/7. And since the domain inside is barely a real threat, these guys are slacking way too hard. Jin looks totally clueless about what he means by that. But Yoon mentally notes that these modern security dudes are way softer than Grabbing the guy with glasses by the collar, Yoon drops a heavy question, asking if he seriously wants to flip his life around. The kid stammers out a yes, claiming he will grind harder once he actually gets drafted into a guild. Yoon cuts the crap flat out, telling him that a traitor bloodline will never escape the gutter if he just sits around waiting for a miracle. But if he actually steps up and grabs his own destiny, instead of banking on blind luck, he could definitely become a massive threat. Walking away, Yun leaves him with a cold reality check, saying the choice to stay a total loser is entirely up to him. Deep down, Yun silently apologizes to Ben for treating his great-grandson so harshly, hoping the kid makes the same bold choice his ancestor did. Just seconds later, the boy finally grows a backbone and starts trailing behind our main character. Yun suddenly signals him to freeze, spotting a massive swarm of security guards blocking the path. Knowing these guards have trash detection range, our guy maneuvers, like an absolute ghost, to slip right past their blind spots. Layer by layer, they completely bypass the security grid, successfully infiltrating the massive Ding family estate undetected. It barely takes a minute before they stumble upon a crazy discovery, uncovering one of the hidden entry gates into the family personal dungeon. This specific gateway spirals deep underground. Just by scoping out the first wave of creeping monsters, our lead instantly figures out that the difficulty scaling here is noticeably spicier than the zone they raided earlier. He also points out the severe lack of mobs, guessing the Ding family probably farms this area on a tight schedule. Seeing a golden opportunity with just 2 low-tier zombies wandering around, Yoon tells the kid with glasses to step up and wreck them. Jin starts panicking and tries to back out, crying about how his solo survival odds against those 2 freaks are absolute zero. Despite the whining, we catch him actually throwing down a moment later, or at least aggressively flopping around. One crusty zombie actually leans in for a bite, but right before it connects, the second monster gets pissed off and absolutely decks its own teammate. Watching this clown show from a distance, our guy yells at him to drop a counterattack already, but the kid just screams that he is too scared. Yoon fiercely pushes him to swing back, promising he will play bodyguard so the kid does not actually get packed up. Hearing that safety net, the kid finds a scrap of bravery, lunging at one of the creatures and landing a solid blow. The second ghoul immediately exploits that opening for a dirty sneak attack. Yoon cracks a proud smile, mentally hyping up the exact outcome he predicted. The kid clearly lacks ego, but his raw talent and spacing mechanics are actually god tier. That crazy footwork keeps him alive and lets him instantly punish incoming strikes. Running purely on adrenaline, Jin absolutely smashes his heavy shield right into one of the freaks, chipping away its health bar and breaking its stance completely. Our lead instantly capitalizes on the stagger, blurring forward to execute both monsters in a clean sweep, leaving Jin completely stunned when a level up notification pops up over his head. Looking fly as ever, Yoon drops some game knowledge, explaining that the system splits the experience points based on combat assists, basically breaking the monster guard right before the kill shot counted as a major assist. Oh, and by the way, he actually looted this sick weapon from that previous dungeon he cleared out earlier. Right after that, Yoon grills Jin about how he is spending his hard-earned stat points. The kid nervously admits he has been putting everything into a balanced hybrid build. Yoon squints at him, asking if a balanced build means he is actually wasting points on agility. Looking super embarrassed, the boy nods yes, defending himself by saying a slow-moving tank player will never get picked up by any decent raiding party at school. Yoon totally gets the logic but urges him to look at the bigger picture. Once players hit level 60, those advanced class evolutions come with extremely strict stat requirements. For example, unlocking the Heavy Fortress tier requires a flat 60 points in stamina, plus 90 points cranked into pure defense, meaning that throwing his stats around like a casual is a massive mistake. Shrugging it off, Jin mentions that average players spend their entire lives grinding and barely even scrape past level 40. So dreaming about hitting level 60, which is straight up S-rank territory, feels completely delusional for a guy like him. Yoon grips the kid's shoulder tightly, dropping his voice to a dead serious tone, demanding that from this second forward he locks his eyes on that rank, S. Actually, he tells him to aim for power that completely shatters the S-rank ceiling. Right after delivering that insane hype speech, our lead mutters to himself that he desperately needs his own leveling strategy too. Without wasting time, he pulls up his glowing status panel, but something on the screen instantly catches him off guard. His mirror world skill actually farms some hidden experience points, which was exactly his master plan all along, meaning this broken ability can actually level up. To test this crazy theory, our boy spends the next few hours absolutely slaughtering monsters. While slicing through the horde, he runs the math on the massive attack boost. Trick Blade stacks every single time he burns mana, right up until the timer runs dry. The exact second his buff fades, a headless beast lunges straight for his throat. He dodges the ambush effortlessly, but putting the creature down permanently requires 2 full power strikes. Yoon realizes he cannot afford to slip up like that during a real deathmatch, meaning he needs to grind his skills up insanely fast. Right on cue, he hits the next level, totally boosting his mood, since his growth rate leaves regular players eating his dust. Plus, Mirror World is soaking up massive experience. He suddenly spots figures approaching, so he immediately drops into the shadows to spy on them with Jin. Jin turns to our guy, asking if they are pushing their luck way too far this time. Yoon silently agrees in his head, admitting that juggling monster hunts, dodging heavy patrols, and tracking his Trick Blade cooldowns is a heavy mental load even for his brain. Speaking of loot, after wiping out the mob, he managed to secure a brand new skill book. He instantly tried reversing it to see the secret upgrade, but the final skill turned out completely useless for actual combat. On the bright side, Mirror World only needs 30% more experience to hit the next tier. If level 1 is already this insanely broken, he can barely fathom the god tier stats waiting for him at level 2. With that huge potential in mind, and having zero clue if other dungeons drop the same skill experience, he makes the bold call to hunt down the area boss right now. As they creep closer to the target zone, Yoon realizes the guard patrols are heavily stacked, forcing them to move like ghosts. Reaching the core room, they freeze in pure shock. The mighty dungeon lord is actually chained down and completely subdued. Jin mutters that he has never witnessed anything this crazy before. Their academy dungeon boss is usually just blocked off by a ring of security guards, keeping clueless students from wandering too close. Those brutal chains locking the monster down must be ultra-rare endgame gear. Yun totally ignores the fancy bindings. His brain is already locked on formulating a clean plan to snipe the boss, without triggering a massive turf war with the heavily armed guards. Minutes later, a random guard is taking a quiet bathroom break. That peace shatters instantly when Yun drops a savage strike on his neck, knocking his lights out cold in one hit. Wearing a terrifyingly dark grin, our boy gives the guard a brutal reality check, telling him to spill the secrets the easy way, because the hard way guarantees he spends the rest of his life drinking from a straw. Shaking with pure terror, the guard begs him to just name his price, swearing to leak every detail. Honestly, the Ding family paycheck is absolute trash, definitely not worth dying over today. Hearing that weak response makes Yun cringe hard, realizing he wasted perfectly good killer intent on a total pushover. Singing like a bird, the guard reveals that the mansion study room is totally packed with exclusive passes to the hero domain. He even suggests that if Yoon is just some crazy stalker fan of the legendary Ding Kun, he should just knock on the front door politely. They would probably welcome him right, in making this whole violent hostage situation completely pointless. Hearing that garbage takes Yoon from 0 to 100 in pure rage. Noticing the deadly aura spiking again, the guard cries out, swearing on his life that the pass intel is legit. He quickly adds a massive catch, explaining that those entry tickets have a strict time limit, meaning if he actually attempts to use one, he better bring a verified elite guest with him, or the security team will drag him into a brutal interrogation room. Done playing nice, Yun grips the guy by his combat armor and commands him to drop every single item in his inventory right now. Cutting to them exiting the dungeon zone, our boy interrogates the hostage, asking if this is genuinely the only healer-class skill book hiding in his stash. The terrified guard swears it is his entire stock, crying about how the greedy Ding family hoards all the god tier drops, looted from the dungeon runs, leaving the frontline grunts with absolute trash tier scraps. Not wasting a single second, Yun activates Mirror World to reverse the healing skill. Right after the trembling guard points out the exact mansion layout, pinpointing the restricted study room, and warning him that trespassing is an instant death sentence unless personally invited. Plus, the entire security force sits at a terrifying level, 30 minimum, acting as a massive brick wall for any rogue player trying to stealth inside. Yun coldly tells the guy to mind his own business, demanding the guard spit out every last scrap of intel regarding the inner defenses. The guy drops the intel, explaining they're standing right in the main courtyard, a spot with surprisingly chill security. But don't get it twisted, lurking inside that massive mansion is the head patriarch sitting at a solid level 42. The rest of the bloodline is currently MIA, but they're bound to pull up any second now. Realizing a brutal showdown with the patriarch is totally unavoidable, Yoon doesn't hesitate. He instantly knocks the guard out cold. He then orders Jin to stay put and hold down the fort. Slipping back into the dungeon, our boy hatches a crazy plan. The fastest way to bait out the patriarch, weaponize the dungeon boss itself. He figures out these greedy scumbags deliberately keep the boss alive, just to farm the dungeon on repeat, without it collapsing. The crazy part, the heavy chains holding the monster are guarded by just one lonely dude. They seriously thought nobody would be psychotic enough to actually pop the lock. Melting out of the shadows like a ghost, Yun easily drops the guard. He shatters the monster's restraints and pockets the chains for himself. And get this, it's a level 60 artifact radiating some absolutely insane energy. Unleashed at last, the beast lets out an earth-shattering roar, a shockwave so massive it instantly drags the patriarch out of his cozy mansion. The chaos forces almost every single guard to rush into the dungeon to desperately hold the line. Right on cue, a fleet of luxury cars pulls up to the estate. The second family patriarch steps out, dragging along Ding, who won't stop crying about the brutal beatdown our MC handed him earlier. The old man quickly scrambles to open the door of the second ride. Out step those two familiar girls, and the patriarch is treating them like absolute royalty. He practically bows, welcoming them to his so-called humble abode. But a second later, he viciously boots a random worker out of the way just for standing too close. As the VIP group struts inside, watching that sickening display totally messes with Jin's head. Our MC drops back in out of nowhere, smirking that even more of the so-called hero's descendants have rolled up. The glasses guy stares in absolute shock, desperately asking Yun how the heck he managed to bounce back so incredibly fast. Yun casually reveals he literally set the dungeon boss loose. And sure, the beast might only be rocking level 30 stats, but if those clowns want to capture it alive, they are in for a total nightmare. That the worker who just got kicked like a dog, yeah, that's actually his uncle. He dropped some heavy lore ever since Yun Che's family was brutally wiped out. His own bloodline got caught in the crossfire just for being linked to the alleged traitor. They've been crushed by the Empire's pure toxicity ever since. And thanks to some shady backdoor orders from the famous hero Ding Kun, the daily humiliation just kept spiraling out of control. Ultimately, they were stripped of their humanity, forced into slavery, and treated like literal trophies the hero's family flaunts to flex their massive egos. Jin admits that back in the day, his dad and uncle actually tried to fight the system, but the backlash was totally devastating. The trauma completely broke his dad's sanity, while his uncle was reduced to being the Ding family's obedient little lapdog. Hearing this brutal backstory, Yoon silently questions himself, wondering if he seriously messed up by dragging this poor kid into his own messy war. Brushing past him, Yoon coldly states he's sticking to the mission and storming that mansion no matter what. Panicking Jin begs him to seriously rethink this suicide run, because if he gets caught, he's 100% dead meat. Yoon's eyes turn ice cold as he bluntly replies that he knows the stakes, but if you don't gamble everything, you're never going to flip the script. Plus, if you overthink every single move, you end up doing absolutely nothing. He looks Jin dead in the eye. I can help you rewrite your pathetic destiny right here, right now, but you need to figure out if you actually have the guts for it. Shaking with fear, Jin warns him he's picking a fight with an insanely overpowered bloodline, and that making a dent in their armor is basically impossible. Crouching down to launch himself, Yoon smirks and drops a bombshell. He isn't trying to take down just one family, his endgame burning the entire empire to the absolute ground. Meanwhile, deep inside the lavish estate, a maid frantically updates the newly arrived patriarch about the massive dungeon breach. The VIP girls eavesdropping on the chaos raise an eyebrow and ask if he's serious. Shouldn't he go back up his squad instead of playing tour guide? The old guy waves it off, bragging that his big brother can easily mop up that mess solo. Besides, today is a massive deal. It's not every day someone of her insane caliber actually graces them with her presence. Fact is, every single heavy hitter from the Ding family is rushing over right now just to catch a glimpse of her. Heck, even the legendary hero himself is practically begging to host her in his personal domain. Lurking in the shadows and absorbing every word, Yoon realizes this mystery girl's status is completely off the charts, and maybe, just maybe, she is. He needs someone to help him crash that hero domain. Yoon also catches a wild detail. The blonde girl actually shares his exact last name, but he totally brushes it off. He sneaks straight toward the study, though it looks like one of the girls senses someone watching them from the shadows. After smoothly dodging a few maids, our guy finally slips right into the target room, but looking at the massive pile of junk inside, he seriously doubts he can track down his prize before the enemies catch wind of his trespassing. And speaking of those bad guys, they are already marching back from the domain. The top patriarch orders his whole squad to lock down the mansion, guessing that whoever unleashed that domain boss is definitely hunting for his father's hidden stash. Meanwhile, Jung is getting super frustrated because those entry passes are nowhere to be found. Down to the very last drawer, he flexes a skill he picked up earlier, turning the metal lock totally ghostly to pop it open. The first thing he spots is a heavy journal, but right underneath he strikes pure gold, his target item, and a stack of top-tier skill books. At the exact same time, a massive swarm of guards floods the mansion grounds. Jin catches sight of the mob and panics, wondering if their cover is already blown. Pure terror grips his chest, knowing that getting caught means ending up just like his uncle, or honestly way worse. Just as he decides to quietly dip out, the main character's words echo in his head, and he suddenly unleashes a massive ear-piercing scream to grab every single guard's attention. That crazy bait actually works, and the whole pack instantly charges after him. Jung hears the wild shout and dives straight out a window. A sneaky grin crosses his face, realizing his partner is actually stepping up to the plate. Gliding right over the cliff, he loudly brags about stealing their ultra-rare chains and wiping out the study's skill book stash. If they want their precious loot back, they better catch him. The furious mob instantly pivots to hunt him down, but Yoon already flipped a debuff skill called Slowing Glare, and thanks to that trick, he is moving 30% faster than the entire enemy squad. The top boss roars at his men to crush the intruder, seeing him sprint directly back toward the domain. Dashing through the chaos, Yoon figures that a guard-free zone means they already locked down the boss. And if they just pulled that off, the monster has to be hanging on by a thread of health. which is honestly the absolute most perfect setup he could ask for. Cutting back to the second patriarch, chilling with the girls, the blonde asks if he is worried about the madness exploding outside. The guy waves it off, claiming his older brother could never get dropped by some random nobody. Jumping back to the wild chase, the boss orders his heavier troops to guard the domain monster, while commanding the speedsters to stick with him and run down the thief. Yoon totally predicted this move, but he knows he holds the ultimate advantage, dumping almost every single stat point straight into agility, with a bunch of crazy speed buffs stacking up his momentum. There is zero chance their archers and scouts can ever keep up with his pace. Smashing into the domain boss room, he spots exactly what he hoped for. The monster is running on empty. Knowing he has to crank his damage output to the absolute max, he fires off Trick Blade, instantly comboing into Chaotic Thorns. The heavy shield guards manage to tank the hit, but the blast infects a few with pure confusion, causing them to savagely turn on their own squad. Slashing right through their broken defense line, our guy just spams every single mana-draining skill in his arsenal, blasting everyone in his path, to heavily spike his attack damage. Suddenly, a dark look of anger flashes across his face, completely disgusted by how pathetically weak these guys are. It is like living in safety totally ruined their edge. A terrified guard screams at his squad to hold the line. They just have to stall this demon until their patriarch finally shows up. But our boy just keeps bulldozing straight toward the boss, brutally wrecking anyone dumb enough to stand in his way. The patriarch crashes the party, and spotting Yoon dangerously close to the domain boss, the old man goes totally all out, launching himself like an absolute missile. But our boy is already one step ahead, casually flicking open his inventory to pull out a level 60 chain. Since his stats are way too low to equip it normally, he triggers his ring skill, summoning a massive skeletal hand to grip the weapon. The heavy chain perfectly blocks the old dude, and the massive shockwave blasts Yoon right through the magical barrier. The exact barrier protecting the dungeon boss, which was exactly his master plan. Without wasting a single second, he twists midair to drop a massive critical strike right on the monster, completely wiping it from existence and easily stealing the final takedown. While he strikes an insanely epic pose, the system chimes in, stating he skyrocketed 3 levels instantly and his hidden skill ranked up too. Absolutely furious, the entire crowd rushes him at once, but right before they can land a hit, the main character activates Mirror World and vanishes into thin air. A moment later, we see him successfully stepping straight into this twisted alternate dimension. From this side, he can perfectly spectate the chaos happening in the real world, but the catch is, he only gets a 30-minute timer. He quickly pieces together that every single thing in this zone is completely backwards. Because of this rule, the angry guards are nothing more than harmless, glitchy holograms. He casually picks up a random mirror shard, and the system prompts that he can actually extract this item. Yoon is genuinely shocked, realizing he can legally smuggle loot straight out of this bizarre dimension. He immediately pulls up his stat window to check for changes, and the screen is flooded with wild skills he does not even own, all marked inactive. Yoon tries to force them on, but the system flashes a warning telling him he has to master the reverse version in the real world first. However, he can totally manipulate the activation order of these upside-down powers, mapping them to whatever normal abilities he unlocks later. This insane loophole gives him absolute god-tier control over his own growth. Suddenly, he spots creeping shadows approaching, realizing massive swarms of lost souls are roaming this zone exactly like his own experience at the very beginning. Out of absolutely nowhere, one of these spirits morphs into a savage undead creature and lunges straight for his neck. Yoon does not even flinch, gripping his blade and casually slicing the monster into literal pieces with zero effort. Once the dust settles, a system notification pops up stating he just unlocked the Necromancer contract, a totally broken perk letting him recruit souls. Any enemy he absolutely wrecks in combat can be drafted into his personal army, and he can spawn them in the real world, leaving our guy completely speechless. Honestly, he is absolutely loving this insane power trip, especially since this hidden skill is only at level 2. With this game-breaking mechanic, he makes it his absolute mission to hunt down the strongest spirits here. Meanwhile, back in reality, the confused guards are completely losing their minds over how he evaporated into thin air. Plus, the secret domain had already shattered into pieces, meaning he definitely should have respawned just like the rest of the crew. One minion questions if it is some high-tier rogue stealth ability. Another completely shuts that down, arguing their sensors would have easily spotted him. The old dude snaps brutally, grabbing the guy by the head, demanding an explanation for where the heck that punk ran off to. If he cannot cough up an answer, the boss swears he will personally drain the cost of the entire domain from his life. Right on cue, our main character phases back into reality. This happens purely because his 30-minute mirror walking timer finally hits 0. Realizing he spawned in the exact same spot, he wonders if he is permanently tethered here, or if there are secret conditions to teleport somewhere else. The elder, practically foaming at the mouth, orders the entire squad to jump him. Yun flashes a cocky grin, telling them to chill out because he brought some backup. He immediately unleashes his brand new undead army, sending the rotting beasts straight into the terrified security guard. Most of the grunts start totally panicking, but the old geezer barks at them to hold the line, reminding the cowards that these monsters are nothing but low-level trash mobs. One lucky guard manages to deflect a claw strike. He quickly glances at the creature health bar, and noticing it is super weak, he suddenly gets a massive ego boost. The patriarch screams his orders again, telling them to butcher every single enemy in sight. He even throws in a massive bounty, promising a huge bonus to whoever finally drops the intruder. But they are way too late, as Yoon is completely gone, having used the absolute chaos to slip right through their fingers. While sprinting away, he calculates his next move, realizing that grabbing some seriously high-tier undead units would make him completely untouchable. Another massive detail the system casually drops is that his roaming area inside the mirror world is locked to a 200-meter radius from his starting spawn. Keeping that strict rule in mind, he vows to track down massive battlefields where legendary warriors met their end, so he can farm some absolutely cracked elite summons. Right then, his eyes lock onto Jin, who got completely cornered and is currently getting stomped out like absolute trash. Without skipping a single beat, he lunged in to back him up, slicing the guy clean in half. Just before Jin hit the dirt, he snagged him by the armor, telling him they needed to dip so they could chill and check out their loot. Cutting back to the brawl between the guards and the undead, the guards are absolutely shredding the zombies with zero effort. But there is a massive catch: these rotting corpses just keep respawning every single time they get wiped out. Suddenly, the entire horde gets vaporized by one massive strike. The guy behind the blast steps up, telling his squad they just need to keep crushing them until the summoner burns through all their mana. Meanwhile, over at the Ding estate, one of the higher-ups drops the news to his father that Lady Xiaoyun has officially bailed, all because those trespassers stirred up way too much chaos out in the courtyard. The old man snaps back, refusing to blame the intruders, saying it is completely on his own men for failing to stop the breach. The son swallows his pride and takes the blame, but adds a silver lining: the girl actually accepted their invite to check out the hero's hidden domain. That definitely cools the old man's temper. Still, he swears that the second he finds out who dared to disrespect their turf like that, he is going to make the culprit and their entire bloodline pay a brutal price. With that settled, he orders his son to take inventory and see what else got snatched during the raid. Flipping to our main guy, he is currently staring down the hero's dungeon pass he just swiped. He mutters to himself that the only missing puzzle piece right now is finding someone to actually guide him to the location. But he quickly shakes it off, deciding it is not a big deal for now. Thanks to the level 20 power spike he scored back in the Ding family's territory, he knows he is nowhere near ready to throw hands with the hero. Yun breaks it down. Sure, he fumbled the ring from that first domain, but he successfully walked away with 10 top-tier skill books. Without hesitating, he pulls out the only one that matches his class and instantly absorbs the new skill. This buff lasts for 60 seconds, boosting his crit rate by 8%, while tanking his defense by 20%, and stacking on an extra 15% crit damage. That is just the base mode though. When he flips the skill using inversion, the timer stays the same, but the stats absolutely skyrocket. The power surge is so insane that Yoon confidently claims this buff alone gives him the juice to clash with a target, a full 10 levels higher than his current state. Another sick drop he bagged is this heavy armor packed with god-tier stats, though he is still locked out from equipping it. Aside from the gear, the absolute massive win here was leveling up his mirror world, plus unlocking the ability to summon the undead, completely shot his raw combat power through the roof. Even with all these massive buffs though, he knows it is still not enough to step to the hero. A boss that Yun figures has got to be sitting pretty at S rank, probably spec'd into a berserker class tree. He is basing this off the heavy-duty armor carved into the statues he has spotted. Jin suddenly breaks his train of thought, asking nervously if those guys are still hunting them down. Yoon totally shuts down the panic, reassuring him that they lost their tail ages ago, and since they kept their faces completely hidden, there is literally zero chance they get tracked. Jin does not utter another word, but our MC can easily read between the lines that dead silence is pure, raw anxiety. He totally gets it though. At the end of the day, the kid is still just a kid. Pivoting the conversation, he asks Jin if he knows about any nearby dungeons where high-level warriors have bit the dust. After racking his brain for a second, Jin nods. He drops the bomb that the Academy actually has full control over a zone exactly like that. But there is a catch: sneaking in is straight up impossible. Hearing this, Yun squints totally deep in thought since he definitely did not expect the academy to hardlock a dungeon like a total monopoly. The camera cuts over to the crib of that teacher we saw earlier. The dude is absolutely losing his mind over the insane quality of the skill books he just got. What is crazier, every single one of them perfectly matches his specific class build. Looks like his gamble on Yun paid off big time. The kid seriously has some heavy-hitting connections. The teacher then breaks it down for him, explaining that the dungeon is hard-coded to open on a super strict, unchangeable schedule. But since Yun is clearly a prodigy, the teacher agrees to pull some strings and get him inside, fully betting the kid is going to graduate at the top of his class anyway. Fast forward a bit and we see our boy actually pulled off the infiltration smoothly. Inside, some random guy is complaining that this might literally be his final run in this specific zone. Because of that, he is vowing to slaughter every single mob in sight. His buddy chimes in saying that if it was not for the hero's absolute generosity, yeah right, like that was ever gonna fly. Yun completely brushes off the comment, but a gnawing gut feeling tells him something is seriously twisted about this domain. Their instructor chimes in, dropping the lore that they are stepping into the secret heroic domain. A legendary flex gifted to the academy by none other than Dean Kim himself. Jin trails behind his buddy Yun, completely spacing out. He is low-key agonizing over whether he should drop a massive bombshell. This exact spot is where the hero slaughtered his great-grandfather. Anyway, the instructor ropes in some random upperclassmen to babysit the newbies. The guy is visibly pissed about playing tour guide, but the instructor shuts down his whining instantly and shoves him toward the gate. Time is ticking. As they trudge toward the gate, the random dude glares back, barking at the freshmen to stay in their lane and stay out of his way. Pull any stupid stunts, he threatens, and I will not hesitate to leave you here to rot. Yoon totally tunes out the empty threats. His brain is firing on all cylinders, obsessing over one massive red flag. Why on earth does a beginner-tier dungeon radiate such insane bone chill? Pushing deeper into the shadows, Yoon's squad suddenly freezes in their tracks. Another group is already here. It is the absolute baddies they ran into earlier. Word on the street is, these girls are fellow underclassmen too. The random babysitter nudges his crew, practically drooling as he points them out. He jokes that if his assigned rookies were half that gorgeous, he would actually give a damn about keeping them alive. This clown even starts having wild delusions about putting a ring on Shayun's finger. His buddy instantly hits him with a brutal reality check, telling him to snap out of his little fantasy. Those girls, their power levels are completely off the charts compared to them. They wouldn't even bat an eye at a bunch of scrubs. The dude shrugs it off. I know, man. But hey, let a guy dream. But right at that moment, his jaw drops. The top-tier squad is actually walking straight in his direction. Or, well, that is what his delusional brain thought for a hot second. They totally blow past him, making a beeline straight for our main boy Yun. Yun clocks her immediately from yesterday's chaotic run-in, but he is completely clueless as to why she is standing right in his face. Shayun leans in, casually dropping that she caught his performance at the museum. She praises his insane combat skills, and points out that his deep voice is a dead giveaway. Our main guy is just standing there buffering. Is this how girls shoot their shot nowadays? Her tone stays super sweet as she whispers directly into his ear, saying it was an absolute breeze matching his voice, even when drowned out by the sound of shattering glass. Boom. Yun freezes. He has been totally busted. The girl immediately shifts gears. She snaps straight into battle mode, flashing Yun a quick goodbye. We will chat later, she hints. Dungeon crawling comes first. Yun's mind races as he processes the encounter. The fact that she did not expose him right then and there to everyone, but made damn sure he knew he was compromised, that was a straight-up warning shot. It was her low-key way of signaling that the top brass, maybe even Dean himself, was already onto him. He silently shoots her a bit of gratitude. And to return the favor, he warns her squad about the sinister, heavy aura that has been suffocating him since they stepped inside this place. The blonde girl's eyes widen. She has been feeling the exact same creepy vibe and throws him a genuine thanks for the heads up. The very same upperclassmen who were treating them like garbage suddenly swarm Yun. They are practically foaming at the mouth, demanding to know how a nobody like him knows Shayun. Are you guys secretly related or something? Yun completely ignores their fanboying and coolly suggests they keep moving. The rest of the squad desperately tries to warn the leading duo about the lethal traps lurking ahead, but the random babysitter snaps at them to zip it. His twisted logic, if these freshmen are tight with those OP girls, they must be hiding some insane stats themselves. Why else would the instructor push him so hard to escort them? The rest of the party looks completely skeptical. They are not buying that theory for a single second. Losing his absolute patience, the random dude barks at them to get their priorities straight and remember why they actually came to this dungeon. It is simple math. The more stragglers tagging along, the fewer valuable loot crystals they get to pocket for themselves. As our heroes walk away, the guy mutters under his breath, totally clueless as to why those scrubs get a free pass to hang out with the lady. Meanwhile, he and Shayun are left in the dust, which is exactly why those losers deserve to get permanently wiped out inside this domain. Cut to the outside. Ding storms onto the scene absolutely fuming and gets right in the staff's faces. He demands to know if a squad of lower-year newbies sneaked inside, and the guard just nods, yes. Flashback to 24 hours earlier. Turns out literally nobody bought Ding's crazy story about recognizing the intruders. Everyone just assumed he was throwing a salty tantrum, desperately trying to get payback for the absolute beatdown he took. Plus, one of the top-tier elders straight up roasts him, saying there is zero chance some random student could actually outrun him, so unless he brings some hard proof that these kids are secretly overpowered, they are officially done listening to his whining. Even his own grandpa told him to go touch grass and do something useful instead of throwing a massive pity party. Snapping back to reality, this dude is practically begging the master to unlock the domain gates for him. He wants to end this once and for all. Fast forward, Yoon is out here styling on a mob of level 20 beasts, melting their health bars without breaking a sweat. But out of nowhere, a massive level 30 boss locks onto him, instantly blasting a blinding beam of pure mana right at his head. Our boy narrowly dodges the death laser, but he is not taking any chances, instantly calling Jin for backup, popping heavy shields, and catching a sweet stat buff. Fueled by Jin's massive war cry, Yoon zeroes in, landing an absolutely flawless strike on the target. And to wrap up the show, he brings down his blade with bone-crushing maxed out power. Boom, he instantly hits level 21. Jin catches the XP wave too, soaring straight to level 11. Yoon smirks to himself, remembering how he snagged those skill books from the Ding family stash, tossing Jin the absolute best practical skills for his tank build. That is exactly why they are tearing through these high-tier monsters like wet paper. While they scout for a fresh farming spot, our guy reveals his true target, the legendary obsidian monster. It is a super rare elite spawn, and taking it down guarantees some insane support skill drops tailor-made for his class. On top of that epic loot, he desperately needs to track down the exact graveyard where those overpowered fighters Jin mentioned met their end. If he can snatch their wandering souls, he might just draft them into his own undead army. Suddenly, something completely steals his focus, pinning his eyes on this one specific beast they are tracking. The creature unknowingly leads them straight into a massive nest crawling with its own kind. Yoon is totally baffled, wondering why so many elite bosses are throwing a massive block party right here in this specific spot. But judging by the insane distance they just trekked, their target has to be a rare, wandering variant. These rogue beasts are basically mythical, with zero fixed spawn rates, freely roaming wherever they want inside this hidden realm. Their raw attack power absolutely dwarfs your basic everyday mobs. Back in the Dark Ages, when humanity was weak, running into one of these meant fighting to the bitter end or catching a fast track to the afterlife. Running was never an option because these psychos would literally chase you out of the domain and unleash absolute hell on the real world. But here is the massive upside to all that danger. Crushing them drops a ridiculous mountain of XP and top-tier god-level loot. Yoon triggers his blazing speed, launching a lethal ambush right at one of the brutes. But his strike barely leaves a scratch, and to make matters worse, the freak instantly regenerates its health bar to max. Before his brain can even process the fail, two more lock their glowing crosshairs right on his chest, unleashing a brutal crossfire. Yoon's shields manage to absorb the initial impact, but a savage energy blast still rips right through his defenses. He grits his teeth, realizing that no amount of agility can help him dodge a literal bullet hell of lasers. With his HP flashing red, he instantly summons his undead squad to tank the aggro-burning rubber to get the heck out of the blast zone. Catching his breath, Yoon realizes that, to actually wipe out this elite squad, he desperately needs to power-level Jin right now. Meeting up with his bro, he calls for a tactical retreat to grind some fast XP. Cut to later, our boy Jin is going toe-to-toe with a nasty level 20 beast. Yoon watches like a hawk from the sidelines. Jin manages to block a heavy combo, but honestly his footwork is looking totally clunky. Yoon yells at him to plant his feet, instructing him to angle the heavy shield directly into the incoming damage. Jin adjusts his stance, totally amazed that it actually worked, but drops his guard for a split second, letting the monster land an absolutely devastating cheap shot. Yoon instantly dashes in to save him from getting crushed. Yanking him back, he warns Jin to stop pulling his shield back so far if he wants to survive the next brutal wave. He doesn't sugarcoat it, one sloppy mistake against a high-tier enemy, and it's game over. With the reality check out of the way, our guy steps up to the front line. He covers his tank buddy, and they dive headfirst into the chaotic mob. Fast forward a bit and they've absolutely wiped the floor with the monster horde. Yoon barely scrapes together enough XP for a single level up. But our boy Four Eyes, he totally pops off, skyrocketing straight to level 15, which is the exact milestone he needed to unlock that final OP skill book the MC handed him earlier. Zero hesitation, he absorbs the knowledge and instantly triggers the massive buff on his shield. The MC smirks, declaring they are officially ready to grind those wanderers for max XP. Deep inside the Wanderer nest, the camera cuts to a trio of seasoned pros. They're low-key sweating, completely shook by the sheer insane. These are the elite instructors holding down the red zones to keep the rookies from getting themselves permanently clapped. One instructor straight up admits he wants zero smoke with this horde. Sure, the levels match up, but unpredictable, Wanderers are a completely different nightmare. Suddenly, a blazing SOS flare pierces the sky. The squad instantly shifts gears, gearing up to sprint toward the rescue. But one of them locks in and stays behind holding the line to make sure no other clueless students wander into the slaughterhouse.